Welcome to part two of our fascinating conversation with Dr. Fred Moss, the undoctor, the non diagnosing psychiatrist.
Like eating a lemon is still a lemon. Yeah,
Well, I often tell people that saying I don't know is a perfectly acceptable answer.
indeed. And I don't know is especially the only time it's really acceptable is if you don't know. And
That's correct.
if you don't know, it's actually the only acceptable answer.
That's right.
All other answers, if you don't know and you actually answer a question that doesn't include the words I don't know, then aren't isn't that just a lie?
Well, there's a couple of ways, a couple nuances of I don't know, but you
Yeah,
can
yeah, yeah.
use it
That's
as
true. You don't need those three words exactly.
you can
That's
use
right.
it as dismissive, saying well, I don't know or
Yeah.
I don't care. But
Yeah, yeah,
then
yeah, you could do that. Yeah, it isn't really just it's a notion of passing along. If someone asks you a question, you really don't know the answer, the right answer is, "I don't know." And, one way or another, you have to let that person know that what's coming out of your mouth is not coming from, knowing, it's coming from guessing along with you.
Well, we often try to help people develop what we would call a beginner's mind, a mind of curiosity. And it usually starts off with, I don't know, but I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to explore possibilities. So when I deal with people, Dr. Fred, I offer them possibilities, not certainties.
I love that. It's really good. There's so many possibilities in all the crossroads of life. We have essentially a million or a billion or infinite amount of possibilities any given second about how we could respond, what we could say, what we could do. And we get to choose from those each and every second anew. No matter where the past was, no matter what the past created for us, I suppose there is such thing as habits or uh, you know, n- um, like um, neural pathways. But the real truth here is that on any given second, there's an opportunity to reach for another way to say or do things than you were going to do by default.
Yes, quite often what I tell people is I'm not arrogant enough to believe that I know how you think and feel.
I love that because you really, I don't know, I suppose that is arrogance, but it's also just simply untrue. I mean, you don't, and the thing that's really great is that when we share authentically with each other, there is this notion of a connection or a resonance that somehow, we get the experience of unification. Where if I listen to you carefully and you say what it is you needed to say, and I hear you loud and clear, and then can show you that I hear you by either responding effectively or by recreating what you said in such a way that you know that it landed over here, there's a level of healing that takes place right at that second of being connected with another person that's kind of indescribable and certainly beats the toast out of any psychiatric medicine. There's never been a medicine that creates that. It's at the central treatise of the whole thing here, is more than anything for sure. People just want to be heard. And because with heard comes the possibility of being loved and then loving, and if you're not heard for who you truly are, then you will, then no one will ever know you. And that's the key.
When I was reviewing your Creative 8 uh,
Yeah.
paper. That's very wonderful. And again, I use a lot of 12 step terms, Dr. Fred. In the 12 step world, you say you can't think your way into acting right. You have to act your way into thinking right. And
Mhm.
when I read the Creative 8, I caught that message.
Yeah. So the Creative Aid is a fun book that I wrote a few years ago. It's a way of really looking at, what can you do when you're having a negative experience, when you are uncomfortable, when it's like, dude, I don't know if this is sick or not, but I don't like it, and I want to have a different way of looking at the world. And what I have found is that while we are creating, like this is so, while we're in the process of creating, negative vibrational experiences either get expressed away or simply dissipate and disappear. So things like art or music or dancing or singing or drama, cooking, writing, gardening, those are the top eight. All of those things, if you're doing those things, you're while in the act of doing those things, you disappear. Your negative experiences disappear. I added a
Yes.
couple others, which was cleaning and photography. There's a couple others that are vying to become top 10, but those two are there. And finally, I have it. I'll do a little spoiler for those who wanted to download my book. It's really about helping anybody do anything is sort of the trump card, the one that you can use when all else fails, which all else won't fail. But it's like a go-to. It's an easy go-to, which is really go help anybody do anything. And I think if you look at what's going on behind the doors in those 12-step rooms, that's I think everyone knows that the heart of the 12-step program is service. And there's a reason for that, because when you're in service, all negative experiences disappear.
Well, yes, in the 12-step world, it says our purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to the Creator and to our fellows. One of the things that I liked most about in the Creative Eight when you talked about inviting joy into your life.
Yeah, so that's really something that, when you free yourself of being a slave or a leaf in the river to the negative vibrational experiences, it gives you a moment in time where you can actually choose which context you can now see the world from. And you can even feel it. It's like, some of us sort of, for whatever reason, habitually choose to go right back to feeling depressed or scared or anxious and nervous or aimless or somehow unoptimal. But I really, really see that at that moment, calling in joy and really getting that joy is a very real possible way to look at all things. Have you ever noticed that sometimes you go from feeling sad to feeling joy without any of the data in the world shifting even for a second? Like that suggests that it's a mindset, and what access we have to altering our mindset, it seems like there is a piece there that this hovering self can create a new context and seeking joy, um, even in the profane, right? Seeking joy even in the pain at times, uh, seems like a way to call on all the best resources to deal with life.
Well, one of the first tattoos I got, Dr. Fred, was the words I choose because I consider them the most powerful words that a human has in their vocabulary.
Hmm. Well, I love that. We don't get to choose. Uh, we don't get to choose everything, right? And the Serenity Prayer says that best. The God grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? And
Yes.
and there's something about really getting that in the second phrase there, the wisdom to change the things or the courage to change the things that I can.
Yes.
We get an opportunity to really look at those things and choose to make a difference in those areas that are affecting us negatively.
Dr. Fred, I find out when people, one of the tattoos I have is abracadabra, and some of
Mhm,
the people believe that, sometimes ask me if I'm a magician, but I tell them that it's Aramaic and it comes from the Bible's Jesus time, and roughly what it says is I create what I speak what I create.
mhm.
So when I tell them that we're going to change the script in their head and connect with their authentic self, I said that's where the magic comes in.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm fully aligned with that. You have an opportunity to really show people that the way they're thinking, even if it's leading down dead ends or painful brick walls, is alterable, it's transformable, and it's usually done in conversation after authentic listening has created some degree of resonance, some degree of being connected authentically. And when that happens, that's when the magic to me, that's what I've seen as being the most mm, power packed octane, high octane second of healing comes when another person feels hurt.
So naturally, you understand that you're an anomaly among psychiatrists because both
Mm.
of them, most of them say, "How you feeling? Is it medication's working okay? I'll see you in 3 months."
Hmm.
So how did that fit with the rest of your colleagues when you would actually listen to people and help
Mhm.
them understand they're important, Dr. Fred.
First of all, do you get the absurdity of the question? And it's not the first time I've asked it. I mean, I'm not calling you absurd by any level. I've been asked that question
Yeah,
a few hundred times,
sure.
and
This is another one.
it, yeah, it's great. It's like it's such an interesting question because first of all, I have no idea how my colleagues look at me about this. I don't, I'm not them, and in some sense, it's like they might say, oh no, we listen to them, and then we choose the medicine that they need, based on what they say. Um, so if they say I have racing thoughts, we give them a mood stabilizer. If they say that I've been depressed for most of the last 2 weeks, then we give them antidepressant. And if they say that they're feeling kind of nervous because their mother-in-law is coming tomorrow, then we give them an anti-anxiety agent. And that's called listening, in most psychiatrists' world. But actually getting down to business with what's really so, as if it's like eye to eye, no power gradient, listening to someone and joining them in their, empathically joining them in their human experience. That's a skill set. And it sort of gets beaten out of us over time, not just doctors and psychiatrists, but other adult human beings as well. And we start just declaring judgment and assessing and doing all those things instead of actually listening to someone for what they're saying, especially if they're saying something that's not in agreement with what we think we know. Have you ever noticed that sometimes that person will say something and you'll just dismiss them and maybe even dismiss everything else they say? Like they were doing good and then they said something that you disagree with that you can't believe they said. And then from then on, everything they say about everything is suspect.
Well,
We're amazing.
I've always told people that "but" is one of the most disrespectful words in the English language. When somebody says something to you and you say "yes, but," that means that you have just disavowed everything that they said
Mhm,
and now
mhm.
listen to me. So could you say a little bit more about authentic listening?
Yeah, this "but" word it's not a small word. It has massive implications.
Yes.
So, authentic listening, when you can listen to someone with some sort of idea of you would have said and done exactly what they would have said and done if you were them, um, there's a capacity to just be in marvel, just be in wonder, just be in curiosity, and take what this other person is saying as very, very, very valuable data, to say the very least, no matter what it is, even if it's like, even if the dude is just dead wrong. Like, even if especially if they're dead wrong, like I know, like for me and for a number of people I've talked to, that when someone's dead wrong, like, there's this stuff I can be like, oh yeah, I can agree to disagree with you. Or, oh yeah, you feel that way, but that's only because you're not informed yet. Or, uh, yeah, yeah, I can agree. I'll still smile with a smile of appreciation when you say something I know is complete bullshit. Like there's that. And then there's the other stuff. And the other stuff is actually more dangerous. The other stuff is about the stuff that we know that we know. You know, we really do know. I mean, you can't go through 64 years of life without knowing that. I mean, all the smart people know. Everyone who's ever lived a life of any substance whatsoever, any good person anyways, already knows this. And then we hear someone say something different than this, and it's precisely then where we have the almost the reflexive experience of discounting everything that person says about anything from that day forward. Um, what authentic listening does is give us an opportunity to actually listen to that person with at least some respect, and the allowance for them saying something that is so far away disagreeing with you, and nevertheless paying a proper attention to their human experience and being with them to the next thing that they say, at the same level you would have been if they wouldn't have said that incredibly stupid thing.
Dr. Fred, a lot of times I think people come into therapy and they expect to be guided.
Mhm. Yeah, you had mentioned that, this they want to be told how to live life sometimes, like what
Yes.
should I do, doctor? And I guess sometimes if people are asking for assistance with what should I do, there may be a space for answering on a couple occasions. You know, if they really don't know and you know, and there's something there, you could say something like, well, what I would do if I was in this situation is that. But I think that what people want what I hear in your question is this back to this idea of there's something wrong with me. I'm incapable of making my proper decision,
Yes.
and therefore I need to lean on a professional to tell me what to do. Um, that's very unfortunate. Here's where I think it's not unfortunate in the same situation, which would be I have so many different things going on in my head that I have multiple ways of looking at this issue, and I'd like you to listen to me as I sort of put on the table the multiple ways I'm looking at what to do, and they're in conflict with each other. I can't do if I do A, I can't do B. If I do B, then I can't do A. And can you help me by just listening to me and tell me what you hear? And because what you hear is more important than what I think I say, and we start really looking at that, and then decisions to guide might be helpful in that context.
Well, we talk about wise versus emotional mind choices. And quite often, what I suggest to people is, that we're going to find out what's important. Try to
Hmm.
find out what's important. I have a couple basic concepts, Dr. Fred, that we're spiritual beings and we just happen to be having this human experience. And it's this human experience, this enmeshment in it that doodles our lives up. And then I say, life is absurd.
It
And
is.
we try to figure it out. And
Yeah.
usually I tell my patients when I meet them at first, I say, once we grasp all these three concepts, our work will be done.
Hmm. Life is absurd, and if you don't think that life's absurd, that's absurd. And like, it's unbelievable that someone could actually look at life and say, period. Here's one of the things that's really absurd about it is that we actually think, as I do almost every day, that I go through at least a moment where I think that I got this. Yeah, I got life figured out. I got it by the tail. I'm good. I finally figured out how to live this thing. Like, breather. Oh, finally, I put some shit together and now I got it. And that's just as absurd as any other thing because as soon as we land on that island, we're about to be capsized. We're about, and that's so. But I fall for that trick pretty much daily.
Sure. It's like Socrates when he went to the oracle at Delphi and they said, "What did it tell you?" And it said, "I was the wisest man in the world." And they says, "Well, wow, the wisest man in the world. What do you make of that?" And he said, "Well, what my conception of that is that I'm the only person in the world who truly understands their own ignorance."
Yeah, that I think there's something to that. When you can really get how absurd and ludicrous and inexplicable all of life has been and continues to be to this very moment because we're so addicted to reasoning and concluding. um Something taught to us in the conventional education model that I referenced earlier. So we think we're not right until we get to an answer. And if wouldn't it be interesting if we could give up on the idea that there's an answer for everything? There is an answer for what happens when you put two apples in a basket or something. There's an answer to that. But there's no answer to nearly all of life's many conundrums and koans everywhere. And so it's an opportunity to really get that there's no answer. There's not going to be an answer, and I have no answer to the question like what's the answer. And when we can get that, there is an kind of an unexpected freedom that comes from that realization.
I like what you just said. That unexpected freedom. Rumi, that Sufi mystical poet, said, "Why do you stay in your jail cell when the door is open?"
Yeah, exactly. And you start looking at or the elephant with the chain. You train an elephant to stay where they are by giving
Yes.
them a chain when they're growing up, and when you remove the chain, they'll never leave where they were anyways, even though there's no chain. There's an opportunity to step out of this box. There's an opportunity to bring your true voice, and there's an opportunity to bring your authentic message. And my suggestion is, if that's interesting to you, the best way to do that is to listen. And you had already mentioned that, when you listen, then you create a space for that person, the other person. You create that space of wonder, of curiosity, of marvel. And from there, he or she can create a space of listening for you that might exceed anything that you could imagine, so that you could start saying things you've never said before that are more consistent with who you really are instead of continuing, as we all do, nothing wrong with it, continuing to pretend to be somebody else in order to protect the person you really are, which talk about absurdity, dude. That,
I love your term authentic listening. I'm going to take that from you, but I'll credit you with it.
no problem. You don't have to credit me. It's all good.
We will continue our fascinating conversation with Dr. Fred next week on our next episode of Fishing Without Bait. To find out more about Dr. Fred, please go to welcometohumanity.net. Dr. Fred has graciously offered our listeners his book for free at findyourtruevoicebook.com. And we will have links to more from Dr. Fred in the show notes.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.